This is a cornerstone of what Kari is passionate about, is how to prioritize self-care in your life. Kari, talk to me about your journey with that. It is a cornerstone of what you believe in now. How did you get there? And what does it look like for you now?
Yeah, it didn't start off that way at all. I actually had no self-care. I was just the queen of self-abandonment on every level. And so it really took me going through a deep journey. But originally my self-care was like, oh, it's a bubble bath or a pedicure, all the outward things. And going through the transition period that I did, basically, I changed my complete life. I went down this deep healing journey. And now that I'm at where I'm at, my prioritizing has changed because I realized that I am fully responsible for everything that occurs in my life. And it's not that I can't rely on anyone else, but at the end of the day, it's my responsibility. And so me prioritizing myself allows me to have capacity for the ones I love.
That's it. I mean, you hit it right there. It's no one can do this for us. There is an accountability and piece to it. We have to participate in our own well-being. And that is how we're going to show up as our most authentic selves for our own benefit, because we're worth it, but also if we're going to be any good in any other roles, jobs, places we show up, relationships we're in, is if we first tend to ourselves so we can feel whole, feel filled up when we come into these spaces. So I'm so glad you hit on that topic. Did you have a turning point where this became apparent to you, or was it just kind of a natural evolution as life continued that this continued to show up for you?
I think it just kind of naturally occurred because I had changed locations, I had changed careers, I had changed everything about me. And so I was like, okay, in this new space, what do I want to be? How do I want to show up for myself and for others? And a big piece of that was my mental fitness, my emotional fitness, my physical fitness. Like it was all wrapped up together, and it was just creating tiny little habits and then building off of that. Like it wasn't any big deep dives in. And then what came with that was the awareness after that. Like if I was having a bad day, I had an awareness now that I was like, hey, I actually didn't do this tiny little habit that I normally do that helps a lot.
Yeah.
So let's go try that and see, and it could just be a 10-minute walk, a 5-minute breathwork session, just all those little things that add up. And they don't have to be this grand, 2-hour-long process. It can just be those little moments of like taking a breath, stepping back, all of those things. And so it really, it was building little habits and then following through and noticing when they weren't present.
Yeah, I think that you said something really important. And I had this conversation with another guest a couple of weeks ago, Kristen LaForge. She and I were talking about this simple things, those little habits, those little day-to-day ways that you find a way to care for yourself, prioritize yourself, feed yourself. But then, and they become part of your care system. They become part of your daily routine. But then when something's missing, you're like, whoa, that was having more of an impact. So yes, starting with those simple spaces, those simple things, and they do matter and they do make a difference. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be this, you can just notice over time. And then all of a sudden it becomes a part of you, who you are. It becomes ingrained into what you value. I think that's when you see the value of it and the impact, it becomes part of what you care about, your non-negotiables, those little things being your non-negotiables.
Yeah, one of my biggest non-negotiable is first thing in the morning, because that's my time. So it's like I have a morning routine that is very, not strict, but it's very much something as soon as I do, I'm like, okay, my day can begin now, right? But if I sleep in or I'm in a rush or something and I miss that, my whole day feels off because I didn't get to center with myself and where I'm at and all those things. So it's like each day taking a little time first for you.
Yeah.
It's such a difference throughout the day.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And you hit that. So what are some key practices you have found that work for you? You mentioned that time in the morning, taking that time, that mindfulness.
Yeah. So my morning routine, it depends on how much time I have, but I do kind of do 5 things that, kind of go depending on time and energy and how I'm feeling each day. So I really first thing just drop into my body and where am I at and what am I feeling? What do I need kind of in the moment? I really love to do some embodied dancing. So it's kind of just like putting on a great song or slow or whatever I need. But closing my eyes and just dropping into my body and moving that way, and not doing choreographed moves or anything, but really just moving my body however it needs to move, and getting the energy from that. I really enjoy doing yoga. There's a lot of stretching and just movement into the body, getting the blood flowing. And I find through my stretching, and I mean, I've taken my yoga certification training probably 20 years ago now. So, I mean, I do my own practice, but I can listen to my body. I can tap in to kind of feel, okay, it's a little tight there. Let's work a bit more on that as well. And then there's also, I work with, and this is kind of unique, but I work with turn on energy as well. So depending on the day that I'm going into, I really like to get myself turned on in some sense, and just working with that energy to have that feeling from my body. You know, if I have to go do a presentation, or tomorrow I'm hosting a workshop, right? So I'll get that energy going throughout. So that's how I'm showing up in the world, right? Is with that powerful, like, just very present energy. And I love working with that. So I know it's probably a little different than a lot of women hear about, but it's definitely worth trying. I recommend it.
I think there's a lot of power in that, because, you know, there's a lot of different ways to experience exhilaration and pleasure, and the energy that draws, the motivation that gives when you're passionate, when you show up passionate. It's so much more nuanced than we've been taught and told. And we'll get into that more, but I love that you touched on that, because it is, and it's multi-layered, and there's so much possible when you trust yourself, your body, your mindfulness, get rid of all the false narratives around it, and are really able to tap in to that in a way that's just so authentic, and allows you to show up that way in the world too. So I think I love that you talked about that. We'll come back to that more in a bit. Talk to me about confidently setting boundaries. Those healthy boundaries, not boundaries like walls, but boundaries in places that just allow you to choose where you're going to spend your time, who you're going to give your time to, who you're going to give your energy to.
Yeah. I think for me, boundaries was probably one of the biggest struggles I had. Being a people pleaser, always self-abandoning. Like, I didn't even know that my voice mattered. And so one of the biggest obstacles through my healing journey was finding my voice, being able to speak my truth, being able to say what was on my mind, and not have the fear of judgment or everything else around that. And even if there was judgment, allowing it. Right.
Yeah. Just like, and not, it's like, that's their thing. That's not my thing.
Yeah. It took me finding my new partner. I mean, we've been together 4 years now, but my current partner, and just him being able to hold space for me, and being able to have those conversations. And at first I couldn't even look at him. If we had to have a difficult conversation, I couldn't look at him at the start. I had to turn away, and like my chin would quiver, and I couldn't, my throat would just lock up. Like, it was just so tight and constricted. And he would just hold space for me as we worked through it. And I mean, I did coaching and stuff around it as well to really find my voice. But that finding my voice was probably the biggest benefit for my boundaries, I guess.
Yeah. Well, then you understand that your voice deserves to be heard. It deserves to set space and set boundaries, express expectations. It's, you know, and take up space. So, and if you don't know that about yourself, or believe that about yourself, or have that value set within yourself, you're not going to set boundaries, because you're not confident or believe in that voice enough to express that in the first place. So it's such a necessary part in getting there.
Exactly. And even if people crossed it, I couldn't speak. Like, I'd be like, hey, here's my boundary. And they crossed it, and I'd be like, okay. I have the power to stand up for myself in that as well, right? And realizing that it doesn't make you a bad person. In fact, it makes you almost a better person, because, you know, but I used to get so offended by people that held boundaries towards me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That defensiveness piece. Right? I know. Same thing. Yeah. I used to have the same issue. And I think when you're coming from a place of insecurity, not knowing that value of your voice, trusting that voice, it's very easy to go into that defensive mode until you're able to do that work yourself. And you're like, Oh, okay. Now I understand.
And just the peace that comes with that too.
Oh,
afterwards,
yeah.
right? Like you're just like, oh, this is way more calm on this side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It makes it's so much more in alignment with who I am. And, because I've set those things in place to live that way. Yeah. So important. So good. Thank you for that. Taking care of our emotional health, as much as our physical health, our mental health, our sexual health, they're all tied in their spiritual health. They're all tied in those spaces. So talk to me about your journey with that, because you that's what you really work in all of those spaces. But talk to me about your own journey and getting there and seeing not only the value for yourself, but how it is you could step in and help other women.
Yeah. So I guess from the start of my journey, like the big piece that I was missing through it all, because I was into fitness like you, I did I know you ran track, but I was into weightlifting and that kind of thing. And those are great, but you can also use them to numb out. Right. And so
they're a great escape too.
Exactly. You're like, I was great. I don't have to deal with that today because I'm just going to put on my headphones and do the work. Right?
Off. Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So it was the emotional piece that I was missing. It was being able to sit with any emotion that comes up. I didn't have safety in my body to even know that was an option. So it was really learning, that I can sit with every emotion. And realistically, the stronger emotions are 90 seconds long, I think is what it says. So being able to sit with that for a minute and a half feels like forever at the start.
Yeah, it does.
But once you get into the practice of it and you're like, oh, okay, I can feel this. I'm in a safe place. Like I can hold myself through it. Right. So it's really, it was that process. And it was a long process to really get comfortable with feeling everything and allowing myself to, because at least for my childhood, whenever I had a bad emotion or was throwing a tantrum or got upset, I was sent to my room.
Me too.
Right. So it's like
adults did not have any capacity to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah. Come back when you can be quiet and behave. I put instead of, I'm putting quotes around that because it really wasn't about behaving. It was just really more about not having any room. When you're with adults that don't know how to feel and handle their own emotions, they're certainly not going to be equipped to handle the children's emotions.
Yeah. So it's all the conditioning around that, right? Making you feel like you're a bad person if you have any of those emotions and you want to instantly get out of that emotion. Like you have to be calm or happy and joyful all the time, or no one will want to be around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And that's not life. No, and it teaches us early to stop things, and it teaches us, and this is something I've learned the last couple of years, probably over the last 2.5 years, I have stopped calling emotions good or bad and just called them emotions. They're clues. They're letting us know what is something's brought this up in us. Something needs to be felt, dealt with, acknowledged, but they're not good or bad. They're all necessary. And if we treat them, some are more uncomfortable than other ones, and it's those uncomfortable ones we run away with. And those are the ones that cause havoc if we don't deal with them. Those are the ones that show up and manifest in ways we don't want them to. But you said something so important about that safety piece. Your nervous system won't allow you to sit with those things until it feels safe for you to do that.
Yeah. And a big piece of what I do now in my coaching is pendulation, right? Where you're going from that difficult emotion back to safety, back to a good place, and coming back and forth and just showing yourself that you're capable of doing that, right? You don't have to be fully deep into the darkness and you don't have to be fully into the light, but you have capacity and space to go back and forth, right? Yeah. And so that makes a big difference in just knowing that you have control over everything that happens within you. And especially with the emotions, like you said, I am in the same boat. I 100% agree. There's no good or bad emotions. And it's really the more difficult emotions are the ones that are trying to speak your truth to you.
Yes.
If you can sit in those and you can dive deeper in, those are the ones that have the stories to tell. Those are the ones where the inner child or there's some kind of archetype in there that wants to work with you, or it's typically around, at least I'm finding through my practices and stuff, that it's a lot of fears.
Yes.
And it's all around childhood conditioning and beliefs and what we were taught. And, there's so much. And I mean, I'm almost 40 now, that everything stems from my childhood. Like, it's crazy how impactful that time was for me that I'm still digging that stuff up.
Yeah, so. No, I'm 54 and I'm doing the same thing. And I think it's one of those things, and people sometimes are like, oh, everybody point to childhood. Yes, because that's where we're formed. It's just what it is. Now, what we do with it as adults, that's up to us. That's where the accountability piece comes in. And that's in how we choose to walk that out, heal from it, not heal from it. All those are choices we make as adults. But like it or not, that conditioning happens as we grow up. Our brains are wired to receive and process and move through our bodies, all those things. And so, if you are, whatever environment you're in, you're going to carry that with you, and the unhealthy stuff and healthy stuff, both. I mean, all of those things are a part of it. But until you sit with it and unpack it, you're going to, for the ones that you aren't so comfortable, are going to continue to show up in ways until it's just your body's way of getting your attention of like, this is still here. Hello. We got to, pay attention. And this is keeping you from being healthy.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Sorry to cut you off there.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I was going to say that the piece with that too is like when you're sitting with difficult emotions and, these things come up, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Like we like to be alone because that's what we're taught. But if you actually have someone to hold space for you, it is so healing. It is so loving and just kind to have someone witness you as you experience something deeper.
Yeah, that's really true. That's a really good point. But we have to, and I would say so many of these things, doing it alone, doing it in a silo can be dangerous for us because that's when our thoughts start running away from us. And we don't always understand or have been taught that thoughts don't equate truth. Thoughts are thoughts. Sometimes they're true, but not all of them are. And so, having those spaces, whether it's community, a therapist, a partner, all of those things, a group of women, all of those pieces together to do this, to be seen, to be heard. I can tell you that, my husband and I, we've been together we'll be married 31 years this summer. He is the first person in my life. We met when I was, what was I? 21 or 22? I'm forgetting now. I think I was 21. I was 21 and he was 22. And we met in college. He's the first person who saw me, appreciated me. I felt safe being my complete and total, honest, authentic self. And it was so eye-opening and also like, whoa, what is this? How does this exist? And we've been able to be that for each other through a lot of bumps and bruises. He came from his own pretty traumatic situations when he was growing up that we've had to walk out together in a very messy way sometimes, being able to hold that space for each other and ask each other, what do you need from me right now? How can I show up for you in this moment? It's very empowering, and also knowing that you're going to be loved. And, but I also, I'm on my third round of therapy where it's very important to have those because you don't want to also become a point where you're just emotionally, I got to a point for a long time where in my relationships, I was just emotionally dumping because I wasn't processing these things in a healthy way. So, so therapy is there. There's support groups. There's all kinds of spaces. But yes, I'm so glad you brought that up, that importance and power that can be felt when someone is willing to hold space and honor you and see you in that moment is really, and it's just filled with so much love and authenticity too.
Yeah. And it just builds deeper connections too. Like I never had a deep sense of womanhood growing up, right? My friendships weren't deep by any means. And I found for a lot of it, women were in competition with me and I didn't know why.
Yes.
That was a really big hurdle for me. And it broke my heart over and over again when I'm just trying to befriend these people and they're just in constant competition. And, you're kind of left wondering, well, what's wrong with me or what can I do better? And then you self-abandon even more because you just put on a different mask. Well, maybe they'll like this one or maybe they'll do that. So it wasn't until I really got to heal my sisterhood wound, right? That I was even allowing good quality women to come into my life, to witness me through this, to hold space for me. And now it's just the most rewarding thing I have are these relationships that I've cultivated over time and built through these deep conversations, through the healing, through being witnessed in my own cred, really. Like,
yeah. And it's those people that are willing to sit with you in that. You're like, oh, this is important. These are the people that you want to surround yourself with, the people that you want to show up for, because you know they're going to show up for you. And that really goes beautifully into how we support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically. That was an example of that very thing right there. And you said something important, and this is one of the narratives that I really work on dispelling, is that competition piece. That is what cultural narratives, patriarchy, old tired narratives want us to compete against each other. And so we believe that and we knock each other down instead of bringing each other up. And if we're ever going to make this world the place it needs to be for women, safe and authentic, being able to show up as exactly who we are, we have to do it together. We have to see that we all have a part in it, all have a role in it, that it's by us coming in as a collective that we make the changes and that we're seen being for each other. Get rid of the scarcity mindset. There's more than enough room for all of us. We all need to be having these conversations. And so I'm so glad you brought that up. So talk to me about that. For me, it was so interesting. I found that it was my parents that were always trying to make friends in my life my competition, rather than I'm like, they're my friends. I mean, yeah, we compete against each other and stuff, but at the end of the day, they're my friends. Why are you creating this narrative? And I just, so, I mean, and that there was a lot of that happening. It happens in the corporate world. It happens all the time that we start climbing the ladder and we think we got to kick other women out of the way. It's like, no, we need a whole group of us in the room. Because one of us in the room, we might make a few things, but if we're really going to shift the cultural, discussion, it's got to be together.
I love that. And the big piece of that is we were never taught that there could be more than one woman in the room.
Exactly. It was a big deal to get one woman in the room.
Exactly. Yeah. So you want to be that one woman and you do whatever you can to get there.
Exactly.
Much, right? And now it's a completely different story, but to best support other women is just to be authentically yourself too, right? And then that gives them permission. Like, that's how I learned how to be my most authentic self, is to surround myself with other women that did it. And I was like, hey, this is available to me. Like, how do I get what you have, instead of me being jealous or like putting them down or anything? I was like, I actually adore whatever this is right now. I was like, I want more of that energy. So how do I get that? And if you approach women in that way, they're open for discussion. They're totally open to sharing it. They want other women to succeed. Like, the level of relationships that I have now of women that will celebrate me is incredible. I can't emphasize enough that these types of relationships are out there. Yeah. So if you want them, keep working for them.
Yeah. And also remember too, that work starts with you, because you will attract those kinds of relationships when you are putting off that kind of energy yourself, and you will seek them, you will find them, you will attract them. But starting with that, being accountable for yourself, doing that healing work, knowing your value, not being afraid to say, no, I need this time for me and I'm worth it. And not getting dragged into that guilt and all those things. But it starts there. And then it translates into, you start looking for that in other people. You start attracting that. People feel it in you. There's a presence about you when you walk in a room, when you're carrying yourself that way. That all goes into it. And this work you do now, it is doing that. It is supporting women in living unapologetically, approaching things that sometimes we're told not to talk about, which is completely untrue. We need to actually be talking about them. We're going to get to that in a minute more, but I want to get back to, before we do that, I want to talk about setting and coming back to your why, your values, and everything you do. Talk to me about the role that has played in all of this.
I think the biggest piece that brought for me was clarity. I never had clarity to that level before. Yeah. And now that I've just transitioned out of my corporate job into coaching full time, and I've never felt more aligned and on track with my purpose. Like I fully feel my why and I get to live it every day. And it's just once you have that North Star direction, because the world will pull you every which way.
Absolutely.
If you don't have clarity, you're just going along for the ride.
You are just, you're going to be whipped around in the wind like crazy.
Exactly. And my why for me personally is because of the journey I was on. I wish I would have had a bigger sister to just give me the tough love, but also sit and support me through my journey. And I didn't. I did a lot of mine alone, and it was really tough. I moved completely across the country, completely alone, and had a fresh start. But had I had just that one person to support me, it would have made the world a difference. And so that is my why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Being that person that you wish that you had. Yeah,
exactly. And so I always say, like, I want to be the big sister. I don't want to be the guru or any of that stuff. I just want to genuinely be there to support other women as they go through a journey that's similar to my own, because it's lonely. Otherwise,
it's very lonely, and having that person walk alongside you and just be with you and know that you're valued and heard. So valuable. I love that big sister analogy. I think that's so perfect. And how it's like, let's come along together. Let's create this sisterhood amongst us. And we don't have to do this alone.
Yeah. But the healing journey, like, I find it really funny in social media right now. They're like, oh, I was on a healing journey and I manifested, whatever. And you're just like, the healing journey is the ugliest path that you'll ever be on.
It's not pretty. It's hard. And it hurts. Yeah. That is such a good point.
There's nothing pretty about it. You will ugly cry uglier than you have ever, it's just like, it's raw, it's real, it's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do in your life. It's also probably the most rewarding, but it is ugly.
Yeah. And important, rewarding and important. If you truly want to get to that space of contentment and just being that the freedom to show up authentically as you are. And it's not easy. And it doesn't mean it gets easier when you do that. You just then have that sense of value, that compass, that foundation to work from, that belief in yourself and your value, and those who are for you on the journey. But it makes it doing all those difficult things so much more supportive, so much less. It's just different. I mean, and and it's in such a better way. I mean, and if I had known when I really dove in hard almost 5 years ago, if I'd known what was to come, I wouldn't have done it. At the same time, I can't imagine now looking back, I can't imagine not doing it. So I think, and that's what really got me on this part of it is like, we've got to start having these discussions. I am not the only woman out here that feels this way, but we got to talk about it and bring these things to the surface and make it accessible and part of the mainstream conversation instead of things that are whispered in the corner. Yeah. Living out of your own expectations versus others. You talk about sexual health. You talk about holistic health. You talk about self-care. You talk about all these things together. And so many times, still, even now, we as women, we hear the word sex or sexual health or sexuality or sensuality, and we get squirmy because somebody told us at some point that there was a propriety and appropriateness around it. And all these definitions of what, never mind, we literally have an organ in our bodies just for women designed for pleasure. It was given to us. It was put into our bodies. If you believe in God, God gave it to you, created within you. And yet there's all this garbage out here about what is and isn't okay, how much it is the girl's responsibility, the woman's responsibility, how men respond versus being their responsibility for how they respond. I mean, there's just so much out there, and whether the freedom or lack of freedom that we feel about talking about our sexuality, our sexual health, our sensual health. I still struggle with it today. I'm still working on it today, still trying to dismantle all of those narratives that I've been told. But it is all one of the things that Fanny and I talked about a couple weeks ago is we have to start addressing it as part of our health, our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our sexual health. It's all part of it. And that is as important of a piece as the other parts of it. So I wrap this into, and you mentioned earlier talking about that turn on button, working from that energy. And I wrap this into expectations because that's not the expectation society have laid out there for women. And so it takes a when you start believing they're like, wait a minute, there's a different, better way than this script I've been given. You have to really come at it like, these are the expectations I have for myself. And I'm not going to no longer live by this script. It's not serving me and it's not serving other women. So talk to me about kind of the dismantling, you getting to that point when you realize the importance of it for you and then approach. I'm sure when people come to work with you, if they're anything like me, there's a lot of work to be done there, in terms of value and self-care and even the freedom to feel like you don't have to whisper it when you talk about it. I mean, it's okay, people. We can say sex and vagina. No one's head's going to explode. But that's not what we've been taught.
No, it's not at all. And I mean, it's funny you mention that because anytime people find out what I do, they're like, oh, I have a question for you. I'm asking for a friend. I mean, they're exactly. Yes. Yeah. And they want to go in a corner. Yeah.
No one wants to hear them talking, but everyone wants to know the answer.
That's just it, right? Even in a room full of women, they're still whispering. And that's the craziest part. Like, yeah, it still boggles my mind. And I think because it's such a common discussion for me now that I'm like, it just flows for me. I don't have any of that. I just surround myself with it every day, right?
Sure.
Like I'm trying to normalize these conversations, but for me,
for sure,
it's the exact same way where it was, it was always the men's pleasure was the priority. And if you didn't get pleasure, well, that's on you. That's, figure it out kind of thing. Right. And so even it basically took me getting to my own point where I'm like, okay, well, I want to work on this for myself.
Right.
Right. I didn't know I was going to be coaching in this. This wasn't what I thought I would be doing at all. But this was my calling to it. Right. And so it's just through my own work and my own trials and tribulations. And again, discussing it with women in a supportive group that it finally became more mainstream for me. But I love answering questions about it now. And I love all of the things around it because it's such a, I guess I should say too, in my coaching sessions, it's not so much coaching on the pleasure. The pleasure comes naturally once you address the core issues,
Yeah.
And
once you get all the gunk out of the way so you can actually feel the pleasure. Yeah.
Yes. So it's not so much that, you can't orgasm or you this or that kind of thing. It's like, well, what's blocking you? What's underneath all of that? Let's get to that root cause.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go to that age or let's unload all of this. Right. And then as you do that, so you're unloading all the deep, heavy stuff, you're being supported and held through it too. And then we introduce the pleasure.
Yeah.
Because doing pleasure practices and stuff doesn't really work if you can't even connect to yourself, if you don't even have an awareness, if you don't know what pleasure feels like in your body. Some women don't even know how they like to be touched from themselves.
Yeah.
Right. You don't need using vibrators for everything. Like try not using a vibrator.
Yeah.
Try using a glass dildo or something else along those lines and connect that way and just start to build the connection of what pleasure feels like. And it's not going to take 10 minutes, ladies.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's the thing. It doesn't look like it looks in the movies. It doesn't look like it looks on. And it's not, and it doesn't happen the same way for us as it does men. It just doesn't. Yeah. It's different. Our bodies are different. We respond differently. I had to learn that for myself, that just that kind of that slow burn is what I kind of call it. But I think even just knowing that it's okay to want that for yourself, knowing it's okay to ask, because we were never told it was okay to ask. Only the bad girls did that. And which is just so insane because it's not just whatever bad girls means. I mean, throw that definition out of the window at this point. But it's like everybody has this organ. It's not only some people have it.
A big thing. We're reclaiming the word sluts and whores and all these things because it's women that enjoyed sex and they were shamed for it.
Yes.
You're like, oh,
yes.
as a male partner, wouldn't you want your partner to have the same experience as you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And majority of them do. So it's this weird taboo topic that just, we just need to discuss it more and have more open conversations around it. But it's a lot of like, what is your sexual story?
Yes.
And how can we rewrite that? Let's rewrite it.
Let's rewrite that story. Let's come at it with safety, with consent, with the freedom of knowing that you're valuable enough and it's okay for you to ask for things for yourself. Because I mean, a lot of those things have to be deconstructed too. If this is something like anything, sex, like anything, like food, whatever, pick your thing that if you're going into it for the wrong reason, whether it's numbing, just like we do with food, alcohol addiction, sex can be the same thing. So it's first of all, get healthy with yourself, which I love is what you talk about, because you get healthy so you can come at it from a safe, healthy, consensual, approaching it as you are ready standpoint. And then within that can be the most beautiful thing that you experience. And such a wonderful, it can be a great connect point with your partner. It can also be a great expression and release for yourself. And I think we don't, that's why I go back to that, because of that healthy piece and reframing how we see it in our lives, taking away all this name calling of like, if someone is in a consensual relationship with someone else or themselves, whatever it looks like, that is none of your damn business. You need to
do them.
Yes, what feels the most authentic and honest to them. But because of all those stigmas and all those narratives we were given from a very young age, there's so much, I think, dismantling of that garbage that we have to get to as women before we can even enjoy this thing that we were this experience that is part of our health. I mean, there are studies out there showing that a healthy sex life is good for your health. It's good for the hormones it brings up, the serotonin levels, the dopamine levels, all of those things feed our bodies. And pleasure is so much bigger than what we have been taught it is.
Yeah, and pleasure isn't just sex. And I think that's what people correlate it with, right? Like, you can build a pleasureful life of things that just fulfill you and bring you joy and can give you the turn on energy without even getting climactic around it. It's just, that is one of my goals, is just to build a pleasureful life on every level, right? Feeling abundance, feeling rich, feeling all the juicy vibes that come of being human, and just allowing yourself to experience that. Because even in sex, there's going to be emotions too that come up that aren't just pure joy and pure whatever, you know? So it's, again, having that awareness, being to hold yourself in those emotions as they come up, right? Talking with your partner as they come up through the sessions. And also, you don't have to be with your partner to do the practices, to do the healing work. Like, you don't have to, you can and you can't. Like, you don't have to be in a relationship, I should say. But even if you are in a relationship, you can still do self practices. And that's a big piece of it too, just learning what you can connect. Because you can't communicate to your partner what you like if you don't know what you like.
If you don't even know.
Responsibility. Like, you still have to take your responsibility. It's not your partner's responsibility to pleasure you to that level. They're going to want to know.
Right. And if you can't tell them, you can't be upset about not feeling and connecting if you're not giving anybody anything to work with. And I laugh as I say that, but I'm as guilty as anyone, because I grew up in very conservative faith spaces where you were just not told all of these things about that. Now, you were told once you were married, that you were just got to be ready for sex all the time whenever he wants it. It was never something you as a woman were supposed to ask for. It was all about his pleasure. And if you felt good along the way, great. and do it as much as he wants to. Well, that loses sight of consent as well. Even, within a marriage. So just dismantling all these narratives about it's a two-way street, and also sometimes a one-way street with yourself of knowing your own body. No one thinks too much. Everybody, like for guys, it's like, it's natural for them to masturbate and learn about their bodies. And everyone's laughing about that. Oh, boys will be boys. A girl does it. And there's all kinds of other nasty names they have for her. And we've got to destroy those narratives too, because those are, because when you do get into relationships and your partner is asking you and you're just like, I didn't know I could be asked that. I didn't know that I was supposed to know that. It was just, we're just doing ourselves such a disservice. So I know I went off on a rabbit trail there, but I think it's one of those things I told you before this, that we've got to start normalizing and feeling safe talking about, because it's so funny. Whenever I have these conversations about this topic, these episodes end up always in seasons being one of my most popular episodes. No one comments on the comments. No one says anything, but they're listening. I'll look and I'm like, people want to know. They're just afraid to say. They're not like, oh, thankful, that was so helpful. But the numbers show the listens are there. And that just shows me the importance of we want to know, and we want, and it's just continually, so thank you for the work you do. I know that was a lot of my narrative there, but I think it's just so important that you're opening up these conversations and opportunities for women. You saw it in your own journey. What was that turning point for you what got you on this road, and then what made you decide, wait a minute, not only is this helping me, I can help other women too?
What got me on this road was I lost a person that was very close to me. My grandma passed away, and she was one of the pillars in my life. And that really just was my rock bottom. I didn't handle that well. And so I just started contemplating everything. Like, what's the purpose of life? What's the end goal? Like, how do I want my life to have been? And then we get to reflect back on hers. Right. And so, and how can I honor that? And I just felt really disconnected on every level. I realized I was living for everyone else but myself. And I just had no sense of identity. Like my identity was my career or whatever I was doing at the time, or like I didn't have any self-love, self-trust, any of those things. And so I pretty much packed up everything and moved across country and to a new city that I'd never been before, and just started from scratch. And I didn't know what I was pursuing, but I knew there had to be more. That's all I knew. Like, I was deep feeling in my heart. I was like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, I can't be just 9 to 5, working 2 jobs. That's the struggle, partying on the weekend kind of thing. That was my life. And and toxic friendships. Like, there had to be something more. And so getting out here, I got the fresh start. I met my partner. And during COVID, there was obviously a bit more time. And so that's when I really started the healing journey. And through that, I was able to get certified as well. So it was, I didn't even realize what I was stepping into, but now looking back, I was like, that was perfectly aligned. Yeah. Like the universe knew. It was calling me right to it. And I just kind of trusted it. And now that I've built that trust up through that, everything is aligning so much more beautifully. Like, I know you mentioned earlier, the struggles are a bit harder, but for me, I'm finding they're not as hard because my boundaries are clear. My voice is clear. I don't find I struggle. Like, yes, issues still come up, but the struggles aren't nearly the same they were before because I know my truth and I keep coming back to it.
I love that. You know your truth and you keep coming back to it. And that is so key. You listened to yourself, and sometimes it takes that event in our lives, whatever it may be, that kind of rocks us and causes us to refocus and be like, wait a minute, this life, this one precious life I have is it has a timeline on it. How do I want to exist in it? How do I want to feel in it? How do I want to show up in it? And you listened to yourself and you trusted yourself and you did some really courageous things in there. And you also, like, I think sometimes that moving ourselves into a new environment where it's fresh, where no one knows us, where there's no preconceived notions or expectations, and really gives us kind of that, that foundation, that map to kind of go into this new direction and kind of, I don't want to say reinvent ourselves, but discover ourselves. It's not really reinventing, it's discovering of ourselves. Yeah. And you did that. So you did that. And then you just like, wait a minute. Okay. Not only is this important for me, this is important for women in general. And then you stepped into that piece, which I think is so powerful. I love when someone takes their story and uses it to like, okay, I've learned some things here. And I think that I can bring some other people with me and help them, because we can do this. We can do this in a healthier, holistic, authentic way.
Yeah. And it's funny because I was always the one that people were drawn to talk to. So I've been told by numerous people throughout my life, like, oh, you should be a coach or you should get into, that kind of thing. And I was like, not for me,
Yeah.
I never saw that in me. And so really stepping into this was a change of identity. Really making the stance for women and to have these discussions and to really support them on every level and to know you're not alone. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
But this work is so rewarding.
Yeah. And we matter and we're valuable enough and we're worth it.
And pleasure is your birthright. Like, let's just put that out there.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And it's not something that's only for this day or that time or that space. It needs to be an integral part of our holistic health journey. And
yes,
I mean, and we forget to have fun. We forget to allow ourselves space for pleasure. We've been told all kinds of narratives about it being selfish or about it being a bad, an irresponsible use of our time, whatever stupid description you want to put on it. We've been fed it as women, especially. And that's not true. And that's not true. And it is, I love the birthright. That's so good. That's your takeaway today, ladies. That is your takeaway today. And think about the last time you've allowed yourself to experience that. Is this a normal part of your living experience? And if it's not, explore why and get into that, because you deserve to live in a life that is part of it. That is a non-negotiable. And so thank you for saying that. That was so good. Accepting the layered aspects of ourselves in this journey, as you heal, as you uncover these things, there's a lot of layers to it. So talk to me about that, accepting the layered aspects of yourselves journey.
Layers is probably my favorite part of my own journey and coaching as well. Like that's where all the like juicy bits are, I find, is when you get to go into those emotions, go in deep, see what they're there for. What's their purpose? What do they need? Do we still need to even hold on to this? Can we repurpose this out to something else? Or, is it protecting you in some sense? Because normally at the core of things, it's protecting you from something. That seems to be the main thing, right? So it's like, is this still serving its purpose? And the deepest, most rewarding sessions for both myself and clients is doing the piece work, the layers of like what's in there and why, and how, like, it's just the awareness I think you get after that. And then especially with inner child work as well, it's like you get to reparent yourself now. You get to give yourself the love that you didn't get or whatever you didn't receive, right? You now have that opportunity and that awareness to give it to yourself. So even for me, just yesterday I was dealing with something with me and my partner, and I was like, oh, he's not responding the way I want him to respond, kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I went for a walk and I was like, wait, you can give that to yourself. Whatever you're not getting from everyone else when you're searching external validations or any of those things, you have the power to give that to yourself. So I came home, I sat with myself, I gave myself what it was that I wanted from him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about him at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing, it wasn't about him at all. It was fully me coming back to me.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a great example. And that's how you can show up in a relationship in a healthy way too, which goes beautifully into living out feel, finding empowerment, embracing layers, the effect and impact that has had on your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with others. Because you just hit it on the nose. So many times we ask things of our relationships that it's really our responsibility to find our way to fulfill that ourselves, so that we're not asking if the relationships things that relationship isn't responsible for.
Yeah. And that's like, especially in my journey with my relationships, like again, with boundaries, like this all kind of ties in together, but like,
yeah,
the level at which I hold myself, I can now hold my relationship, but we can be mirrors for each other.
Right.
Right. And as tough as that is at times, it's also beautiful work to be able to do that with someone else. And, I also coach women through heartbreak and dating kind of thing. And that's one of the pieces that I think that is shared a lot, that I think is wrong personally. My own belief is that, because they're always told, oh, you have to go heal, be alone, do your own journey, and then you'll find someone. Right? Where it doesn't have to be the case. Sometimes being with someone that wants to heal as well is an incredible journey.
Sure.
You can work together and you can feel supported that way, right? I don't think there's a right or wrong. I don't think anybody's meant to do this path alone.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. This idea around how this script, our lives are not a box. Our lives are different, are nuanced. There's different paradigms. There's different things to it. Sometimes that close friend that has been in your circle your whole life is actually that person you've been looking for all along. And all of a sudden you come out of a relationship and the lights go on. I mean, and that's just another example of what can happen. Or in the midst of going through a healing process, you meet someone along the way and they're walking that out to you and you connect that way. And so I'm so glad you brought, there's not this like one size fits all idea out there when we're dating, when we're going through this whole process, because it looks different for everybody. And going back to your why and your values and your boundaries, looking at those things. And as you're doing this, are you honoring yourself? Are you honoring your expectations, your boundaries, your values as this is unfolding? If the answer is yes, great. Then this is the path, and this is good for you. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because yes, there's so many things out there right now, especially in dating, do this and what happened? I'm like, it might, but at the end of the day, how are you? Are you healthy? Are you feel good? How do you feel about yourself?
If you do the work, then kind of the toxic relationships kind of drift away, because you're annoying. You really annoy them, because they're like, oh, you're changing, you're not spending the time, you're not coming out drinking and partying and doing all the drama and all the things. And then they just drift away. And when you remove those relationships, you make space for better ones.
Yeah, you do. You make space for those people that have that have those same values, that care about those things, that have a healthy relationship with themselves. It just changes everything when you kind of move that stuff aside. So I'm glad you tapped into that. That was such a good example. Now, rapid fire questions here. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
5 activities that nourish me. I would say definitely pleasure practices. That's a big one. I love spending quality time with my loved ones. I love walking my dogs in nature. Embodied dancing is a really, really big one for me as well.
Yeah.
And then just, I think being like a big nourishment part is being with my sisters and sisterhood. So make time to have a weekly call, and it's just like, it's showing up and being supported in whatever you need, and that really nourishes my soul. So me realizing that my partner isn't responsible to be everything for me, and making other relationships important as well, and prioritizing them just as much has been a big game changer.
Yeah, I love that. That's such I don't think we talk about that enough, the importance of the nuance of those relationships and making time for all of them, and what that brings, the nourishment that brings to us. That's so good. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Ooh, this one is good. I'm going through a pretty big transition, actually, out of corporate into coaching full time.
Wow.
And we're actually selling our house and going to be hitting the road here to go be digital nomads for the next.
Wow.
So it's a pretty big transition right now. So my words were free, of course.
Yes.
Abundant, abundant, loved, definitely aligned and nourished.
I love that. And I love that you're doing that. I think that that's the beauty, I think, of today, the world we live in. And when you're able to work remotely and do your work from wherever, it opens up so many doors to do those kinds of adventures and exploration. So have fun with that. That's wonderful. Oh, that's so cool. All right, Kari, tell women how they can follow you, find you, what some of the things you offer. And don't worry, audience, this is all going to be at embracinglayers.com on our resources page. So you don't need to pull off their side of the road to write these down, but just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to thank you for this whole conversation. This alone nourishes me as well. So
good. I feel the same way.
And the message you're putting out there. So, and as for reaching me, if you're interested in any of the things we talked about and you want to feel supported, I'm at Kari Assoignon on Instagram. And also my website is my company is X's and O's. So it's EXS-OHS.ca or .com, either or. And that's kind of where I have my main offerings. And I have, if you're interested, just send me a DM and I can send you my morning routine. And I also have a little meditation as well for opening your heart to find lasting love as well. So it's all those things, but I'm here for you, and I'm here for any conversation around any of the topics in here as well, because I just want to spread the word, and this is my North Star. So.
I love that. Well, thank you for bringing that to women into the world and for the work you do. It's so important. It's so valuable. Thank you for being part of these conversations. These are the things that move the needle. These are the things that open the doors and remove the stigmas and change the narratives for women and women knowing that we are worth this and we have a right to say this and we have a right to take up space and to be heard and to feel pleasure and to be and to be healthy and whole is just so important. So thanks so much today, Kari Assoignon, for being here with me. I appreciate your time. I appreciate these resources you offer and sharing your story with us. Ladies, think about the last time you felt pleasure, whatever pleasure feels like for you. What is your narrative around pleasure? Do you make room for and space for it in your life? How do you feel about yourself and your value within that? These are your takeaways, your ways to engage this week. But thanks so much for being with us. Thank you again to Kari for her time, her story, and her resources, and have a great week.